She is Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at Karol Gaspar University, Budapest, head of the Institute of Arts and Studies and General Humanities, associate professor at the Department of Communication and Media Studies. Her fields of research are modern and contemporary, French and Hungarian poetry, theater studies, translation studies, and I only mention two of her latest publications. One is an edited volume which is named The Immediacy of Mystical Experience in the European Tradition, and the other one is her book, which was published in 2017, and in English translation it's named Image, Presence and Kenosis in Contemporary French Poetry, and in Valérie Novarina's work. So we're very happy, for your talk. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Saskia. This book was written in Hungarian, and I presented some parts of this book in Cerisy-la-Salle in France at the big Novarina conference. Les quatre sens de l'écriture, that was the title of the conference. So, and I will present some other parts of the work now in English. I would like to offer an analysis of Novarina theater, where self-emptying becomes an important element in the direction of actors. So, the work done with the actors, and in which the Christian theological term kenosis is relevant in the context of rituals taking place on stage. So in the first part of my lecture, I will speak about this theological term, kenosis applied to theater, how can we apply it? And in the second part, I will show you a short excerpt from For Louis de Funès, which was a work presented in Debrecen by the Hungarian actor Tibor Mészáros, directed by Novarina himself and by his assistant. And in the last part, I will speak about the ritual as a remedy. What is the remedy for? What we have to remedy with the ritual. So I will use the term kenosis not only in a theological sense, but also as an aesthetic application to theater. Not denying the relevance to this topic of the Far Eastern sources of inspiration, I offer an analysis of this specific performance. The Christian theological term kenosis, these rituals, these kenotic rituals, to use the vocabulary of figuralistic typology, are the antitypes of Christ's kenotic act, which is the type. The kenosis of Christ is the type of what's happening on stage, the artistic realization of kenotic act. Figuring, which can also mean recreating, in this case means imitatio Christi. According to Christian theologies, ekenosen literally means emptiness, is a primary action of self-revelation of the Trinitarian God. It also denotes the self-emptying of one's own will and the process of becoming entirely receptive to God's divine will. The verb ekenosen is used in Philippians 2:7. Jesus made himself nothing. In the New International Translation, translated as but he did empty himself. In Robert Young's literal translation, the Greek text uses the verb for piano to empty. The New International Translation continues, rather he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name. That's the end of the quote. In his commentaries written to this letter, John Calvin highlights that following Christ also means self-abasement in connection with kenosis. So self-abasement. Compared to other authors, Martin Chemnitz, Hans Urs von Balthasar, or Xavier Tilliet, Calvin has a different understanding of kenosis, which in his view is not a self-diminution or the abandonment by Christ of his divine nature, but rather the act of keeping this divine nature hidden, crypsis. In his Church Dogmatics, Protestant theologian Karl Barth refers to the Latin text of Calvin's Institutio when he contends that the incarnation of Christ does not constitute any kind of confinement, because even in his self-abasement, Christ did not cease to be God's Son. That is the part on the screen, you can see on the screen from Barth. I won't read it out, but that was the summary. To sum up the theological introduction, imitatio Christi also means the possibility of repeating kenosis. Being created as images of Christ means, for humankind, a condensation and a deconstruction of the human idol, images, and its exaltation. On the other hand, the word imitation suggests that there is some volitional act in this. In his work, Systematic Theology, Paul Tillich distinguishes 4 ways of self-salvation: the legalistic, the ascetic, the mystic, and the sacramental, dogmatical, emotional one. The sacramental presence of God is the opposite of self-salvation. Tillich suggests it's in the conclusion of his chapter, I quote, the mere performance of the accepted rites or the mere participation in a sacramental act is considered to have saving power. The sacrament is given, and as such it is understood to negate self-salvation. But the way in which it is used opens wide the door for a self-saving attitude. Apart from some allusions and references in Balthasar and Tilliet's work, Western scholarly literature does not discuss the connection between kenosis and literature, or kenosis and theater. It was the Japanese theologian Kazuo Kitamori who, in his book Theology of the Pain of God, 65, presented the analogy of the father-son conflict, the father sacrificing his son, in traditional kabuki theater in order to explain God's hatred of sin and the love for humankind, which are unified in the pain of God sacrificing his son on the cross. So let's see now, after this theological introduction, let's say some theatrical forms and trainings where kenotic rituality has an important role. The debates on sacrality in Europe and America and the increasing interest in rituals outside Europe compelled 20th century artists to abandon traditional theater and the classical dramatic text. The revolution of the ritualistic theater, which took place in Europe in the second half of the 1960s, is connected primarily to Jerzy Grotowski, by Peter Brook and Eugenio Barba, who was here a month ago at this place at the university. Eugenio Barba had reformed Western theater by researching its archaic forms. Grotowski had in turn been establishing the foundations of actor pedagogy, which has been in use up to the present day and is applied in theatrical practice, as we saw it or we read it in Jaroslav Fred's lecture, not presented lecture yesterday. His organic theater, to use his term, Grotowski's term, tries to reach via negativa the state at which the actor is a vehicle, an empty vessel ready to take in and carry his descendants. The aim of the physical training is to achieve this condition by reaching out to and training the maximal boundaries of the body. As one of Cantor's younger colleagues, Grotowski created a so-called poor theater characterized by its search for a secularized sacrum and demanding from its actor the sort of total commitment usually expected from saintly men in traditional religions. He demanded that the actors take off the mask of everyday life and perform an act of total self-revelation. On the photo we can see Richard Tesla, who was his main actor. Yeah, that was a passage from Zero Theater of Cantor, but it is not very important for us now. So now I am going to speak about Novarina, French contemporary dramaturge and director. Novarina represents the contemporary French language in its state of mutation, distortion, and transformation. The theatrical practice and the theater revealed in his essay focus on the act of the creative burned and revived by the actor who lends him or herself to action, the hidden liturgy of the word in space. Man created in God's own image becomes a creator through the logos in this theater. For the notion of self-emptying and abandonment of the ego of the actor, a text by Novarina entitled Work for the Uncertain, it was also published in Los Angeles in English, a title which alludes to a passage in Blaise Pascal's Pensée, could serve as an example. So you can see it on the screen. It's an enclosure where we come to see the actor thrown onto the stage, forcefully and alone, wrenching himself away from himself, always like a blind one, a foreigner, an exile, as if fallen from his true place. He speaks like an animal, surprised by the very act of speaking. We come to the theater to take fright with the actor, reliable entry into the incomprehensible body along with him, to breathe through the another, to recapture the taste for living birds. And that is the performance I will speak a little bit more about. For Louis de Funès, that was an essay originally of Novarina. It was adapted for the stage by the author and translated into Hungarian by Zsófia Ridek, directed by Novarina and Adelaide Pralon in Budapest and in Debrecen 3 years ago. The figure of the French actor Louis de Funès is a constant reference in Novarina's works, but the sentences and dialogues attributed to him are imagined. During a rehearsal and workshop at our university at this place, 2 months before the Hungarian premiere, Novarina explained that while in the painting of the 1920s and 21st centuries the human face had already been deconstructed, for instance in the works of Picasso, Francis Bacon, Jean-Michel Basquiat or Chemsutin, in theater, I wouldn't say no one had undertaken this, but much less. It was much less undertaken. Because Orlan, the French performer, for example, is a very good example of this. She's constantly changing images, faces, and her performances are kind of artwork of her face changing. She also operated the face, and the operation was seen by the auditors, and so it was the performance itself. Or Abramovich also, in a way, doing this in certain performance. So, Novalina's Ars Poetica is to show the proliferation, the multiplicity of human figures, like the Cubists did, as if in Novalina's theater the representation of humankind would be prohibited as a mere imitation of the truth. The actor Dominique Pinon says in Unknown Act to prefer her, il restera à dire ce qui distingue l'acteur véritable de l'imitateur d'homme. It remains to be determined what distinguishes the real actor from the imitator of man. The actor's dance in For Louis de Funès is a dance scene in which the puppet of Louis de Funès takes the role of the actor more vividly than the real actor, Tibor Mészáros, who is doing the dance with the puppet. The dance acquires the same function as the sheer logological proliferation and the numerical mania in Novalina's other performances. To present an example, Novalina writes the following in the Drama of Life prologue for the theater of the ears. Quote, the action takes place in the Earthman factory, in the S-man factory, in the Ace-man factory, in the Raceman factory. The action takes place in a velodrome that measures 100 meters by 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 100 meters, end of quote. So now I will show you this excerpt.
Egyedül, ez a szenvedély mozog bennünket.
Yeah, it is in Hungarian, but it's not the beginning, only the beginning, just a few seconds.
Kinyitni a testből. A háború, a sport, a szerelem, a betegség, az is, az orgiáta. Az ember minden teljesítésű, minden lázat elérjen. Otthoni a testet, tehát megválasztani. Nemetés szakmát váltani, állattálni, sőt, kivéti magából, az életből is.
Sorry. So what he says here is how theater is, how man would like to live his own body, and it's kind of softy-dom. That is the word of Novalina's word. How to translate it? Softy-dom. Into English, it's kind of leaving the man. Yeah.
Így azt néz.
You are the actor, he says. And that is the so-called dancing.
összes emberi osztályra. Ezért
So what he said that theater it was created to burn at night all human faces. So that is the metaphysical interpretation I took of this scene. This dance is a non-dancing, of course, and a very awkward dance. An exhausting exercise performed by an awkward body thrown into the world, like in André Malraux's Condition Humaine, human condition. This use of language as well as the dancing to death has a role in his actor's training that is similar to that of the physical exercises in Grotowski's method. The text itself, the text of the performance, makes statements about the actor's work, creating neologisms, introducing hundreds of metaphors. The actor not only says things, he also acts out the process of annihilation, the transition from death to the resurrection. This is another scene of resurrection from Unknown Act, another performance. Which constitute the basis of Novalina's dramaturgy. As he's double the puppet of Louis de Funès helps the actor in this process. In the most climactic moment from a dramaturgical point of view, Tibor Mészáros pulls out a puppet to illustrate the doubling of his person. The image of the perfect actor, the marionette, as such, is not unknown in theater history, and it appears in several of Novalina's productions. Among the ones performed in Hungary, the imaginary operette, the first picture, can be mentioned as an example in which the child of a small family living in a box house is making his puppet's head peek out of the vault of his cardboard hall. Mészáros' work is held in for Louis de Funès by stage assistant Sándor Horváth, or how is it called by Novalina, drama worker, stage assistant, to use Novalina's terminology. As if the performance were a rehearsal at the right moment, Horváth brings in a sheet or a folding screen as if this were a perfectly natural part of the course of events. The folding screen, second picture, covered with translucent off-white paper, is the main instrument to prompt the obscuring of the actor's person. He's becoming translucent, and his imaginary breakthrough. Literally, the actor breaks through the folding screen and become the galanty show or shadow play. In Novalina's, I conclude, in Novalina's theater, the actor's body is a temple and a vessel of the soul, while the ego of the actor is a curtain to be transcended through an act of self-emptying, through the language offered to the space and the audience. This act helps him or her burn out the body by inspiring, see esprit in French, like in some saintly practices in Far Eastern cultures or psychological and spiritual trainings. Novalina refers to the self-emptying of Christ as follows. I don't put it, okay. Personne ne sait ce que vient faire le Christ, le Messie. La figure humaine, il la porte vide. Il vient non seulement faire l'homme avec nous, mais aussi poser le divin vide sur notre face. That's what Christ does, the Messiah. The human figure, he empties it. He comes not only to do the man with us, but also to put the divine emptiness on our face. Conclusion, in his work, Performance Theory, Schechner highlights that the attention paid to the manner of theater making is already an experiment in the ritualization of performance. The attention paid to the manner of theater making is performance. In a period when authenticity is difficult to define, quote Schechner, when public life has been theatricalized, Schechner elaborates, the performer was asked to doff his or her mask, traditional mask, not to be not an agent of playing or fooling or lying, public masquerades, but one who tells the truth. If not this, then at least she or he should show how the masks are put on and taken off, perhaps in that way educating the public to the theatricalized deceptions practiced on them by political leaders and media dons. Instead of mirroring the age, performers were asked to remedy it. The professions taken as models, and frequently enough cited by Grotowski and others, the professions taken as models included the priesthood and medicine. Questioning, constructing, and deconstructing anthropoglyphs, Novarina theatres also aims at the resultative aspect of rites. In fact, it also has a liturgical purpose in the above sense of remedy of the vessel. There is a certain anamorphism in understanding kenotic ritual. In other words, the spectator must have the correct angle. She must be involved in order to see a comprehensible form or figure. Compared to the scripted, written rituality, there is a liminoid state of receptivity of the live theater performance, which is performed. There is a recurrent cognitive metaphor in Novarina's work. Christ is the word, logos, and the stage is the place where words are eaten. It is the place of the Last Supper, but the Last Supper is not simply a metaphor or historical allusion, but a figure of speech which has two parts, the type and the antitype, linked with the radical openness towards the future. According to Northrop Frye, compared to the metaphor, typology is not a simultaneous figure of speech. Rather, it is a figure which moves in time. Even antitypes have a progress, that is, an intensification where newer and newer perspectives are opened up until they reveal the apocalypse. This movement describes Novarina's circular, or rather spiral-like dramaturgy very well. He also uses names like anti-person, spiral woman, etc. For Novarina, the theater is the place for the renewed form of the Last Supper, the communion of the actors. The aim of the ritual after Bramgart, as I read in his abstract sent for this workshop, is this communion, or with the Turner's term, it would be communitas. In typology and in Novarina's dramaturgy, there is both a horizontal movement forward and also a vertical leap. The theological approach to Novarina theatre, which I have presented, is rather unusual in French theatre criticism. Religion and religious issues encounter so much hatred in France that, as Novarina himself noted in an interview, he was afraid of publishing one of his texts entitled Saint Ashes for Ash Wednesday, in which he wrote about the meanings of the term kenosis.